and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and vacuous forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome back to the program. Happy Friday. There's only 5 days left until the 2024 general election. Can you hardly believe it? Can you even think that we would ever get this close to it? I, for one, cannot wait for next Tuesday for another Trump victory, though there are some on the left that are saying that that's not going to happen. We're going to talk about that a little bit today, but first, it's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. Normally during the week, we only talk about what I want to talk about. But Friday is a little bit different. We're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about. You see, the difference is, during the week, if I have the phone lines open, I may not answer your phone call simply because I don't really care or don't want to talk about what you want to talk about. Well, during Friday, it's a little bit different, though. I just kind of roll the dice, and whatever comes up, that's what we talk about. So if you want to be part of the program, if you want to join Friday call-in, Open Line Friday, I forgot what I was saying there for a little bit. The phone number is 307-374-8989. That's 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call if you got something on your mind and you want to talk about it. One more time, the phone number for Open Line Friday right into the studio is 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call, and we'll get you on the air, and we'll just find out what everybody's talking about across the Cowboy State. I guess one more time, in case you're just listening on the Independence Network, it's 307-374-8989. If you forget what the phone number is on the Ditto Cam, it is printed right on the front screen, right on the overlay, all the advertisements, so it's pretty hard to miss. So anyway, give me a call. But we begin this morning with a view from the left. Now, I know in Republican circles, we tend to get sucked into this bubble. And we, generally speaking, only hang out with the people that agree with us. And so it becomes kind of an echo chamber. It's fascinating, but hardly anybody seems to think, within my circle, right? It's anyway, well, Trump is going to win. There's no way that he could possibly lose. And I have to continually remind them, well, no, there is a way that he can lose, and that's if he doesn't get enough votes. So get out and vote is usually the first thing I tell him. But the reality is there is a possibility that Trump has failed to convince a vast majority of the country. And an example of that was an op-ed that's printed in the New York Times this morning. And it's entitled, "No, It's Not by Susan Stubson." They would never print, even the New York Times would not print her crap on the front page of the paper. but it's entitled, Why the Right Thinks Trump is Running Away with the Race. Now, again, first of all, it's the New York Times. Second, they're editorializing on what they believe Republicans think, because I doubt that there are that many Republicans that actually work at the New York Times. But let's see what they have to say. And I quote, the torrent of polls began arriving just a few weeks ago, one after the other, most showing a victory for Donald J. Trump. They stood out amid the hundreds of others indicating a dead heat in the presidential election. But they had something in common. They were commissioned by right-leaning groups with a vested interest in promoting Republican strength. These surveys have had marginal, if any, impact on polling averages, which either do not include the partisan polls or give them little weight. Yet some argue the real purpose of partisan polls, along with the other expectation-setting metrics, such as political betting markets, is directed at a different goal entirely: building a narrative of unstoppable momentum for Mr. Trump. The partisan polls appear focused on lifting Republican enthusiasm before the election, and perhaps more important, cementing the idea that the only way Mr. Trump can lose to Vice President Kamala Harris is if the election is rigged. Polls promising a Republican victory, the theory runs, could be held up as evidence of cheating if that victory does not come to pass. Now, there's a number of things at play here. First of all, it's the New York Times, and they are, even though they claim to be the nation's paper of record, they've long since abandoned that. But they, too, have an agenda in mind. And it's the fascinating contradiction of why I wanted to start out with this one is they're the ones that saying, well, all of these polls have a vested interest in Trump enthusiasm. Well, the editors of the New York Times have a vested interest in you believing that all the polls have a vested interest in Trump being successful in the election. So it's this wonderful little circle. Now I've got another piece later on in the program where Nate Silver says that all these other polls are a bunch of bull crap, and that whomever is running all these polls that says that the election is a dead heat is absolutely just lying to you. So polling is, and you should take polling for what it is. It is a snapshot in time. It's a snapshot of a particular group and what they think of at that given time. Now, I suppose if you used any political sample, that's what polls call how many people were in their group, a sample. If you sampled them before Joe Biden said this,
the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
It would probably show up as a little bit less support for Donald Trump. But after Biden said that,
the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
The support for President Trump would probably be higher. Or, for example, and I'm going to use this later on in the program, but if you had sampled people before they heard this,
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women, ever. It's just that simple. They're intimidating to him. He doesn't like to be challenged by them. And, Nikki Haley will call him on.
Okay. Well, that was Mark Cuban, billionaire Mark Cuban, saying that there are no strong women around Donald Trump. Now, had you taken a poll right before you heard that, it would probably show up as a little bit less support for Donald Trump than had you taken the poll afterwards. Now, what I'm getting at is that polling is only a snapshot in time. It's a picture, a photograph, a screenshot capture of what is happening at a particular moment with a particular group of people. You shouldn't take it to mean that it is representative of the entire country, because most polling, like a big poll, would sample 5,000 people. But most of these polls that you're reading that show it's a dead heat, you're only talking about a couple of thousand people that weighed in on the poll. So really, you should take them for what they are. And that's just a picture of a particular group, what they think of in that time. And it all depends on how the questions are phrased in the poll, too. You have to be very careful not to inadvertently bias the poll by asking a question that is biased in some way. How you ask a question sometimes is as much or more important than the question itself. It's very easy to ask a leading question. A leading question, one of my favorite ones, is, so when did you stop beating your wife? Okay, that's what's called a loaded question, right? It assumes, and it doesn't matter what the answer to the question is, you're still admitting that you beat your wife. Okay, it's a loaded question fallacy. And in polling, it's really easy to slip into any of those fallacies or any of those little traps and ask a question that is particularly biased. Or another big thing is perhaps you sample more Democrats than you do Republicans, or more Republicans than you do Democrats. If you were to take a poll in Wyoming, you would have and it would just perhaps work out this way because this is how the electorate is made up, you would probably have way more Republicans than you would Democrats. And so any poll that's taken in Wyoming could not be used as representative of the rest of the country. Similarly, you should not take a poll from New York and think that it applies to Wyoming. So all I'm getting at here is that you should just look at polls for what they are. And that's merely a snapshot in time. Next on Open Line Friday, and by the way, yeah, it is Open Line Friday. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number is 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call and I'll put you on the air. But does everybody remember CBS News? Yeah, they're the folks that selectively edited their interview with Kamala Harris. We're going to get to that in just a second. But Norah O'Donnell of CBS News started her program by trying to say that Trump's arrival in a garbage truck was a campaign stunt. While when Joe Biden said this,
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
that was only a gaffe. But she began her news broadcast in that fashion. The article is entitled "Giving No Grace." CBS News anchor opens show bemoaning Trump's garbage stunt. And I quote, "Shortly after former President Donald Trump took questions from a garbage truck while wearing a reflective vest on Wednesday," which, by the way, if you haven't watched any of that footage, you should go back and really watch it. It's absolutely hysterical. It was a brilliant campaign move, but go back and watch it. Anyway, CBS News anchor Norah O'Donnell criticized the Republican nominee's campaign stunt and claimed that President Joe Biden's characterization of Trump supporters as garbage was a gaffe. Norah O'Donnell opened the CBS Evening News reporting on Trump's garbage truck press conference in Green Bay, Wisconsin, saying that it is proof that he and his supporters are giving no grace to a gaffe by President Biden, where he, in his explanation, inadvertently, oh man, the word choice is so important.
2 + 2 is 4, not 5 if you want it to be 5. And this is not to be discriminatory. This is to stand up for language. Words mean things.
Words do mean things. And if you listen to the morning show, Joey and I go back and forth on this a couple of times, but words actually mean things. Let's see here, where was I? Where Biden inadvertently called Trump supporters garbage. So in other words, he didn't mean to call all Trump supporters garbage. No. No, he didn't mean that at all. What he meant to say was, frankly, I don't know what he meant to say. But anyway, the CBS News anchor, who was one of the moderators for the vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, also praised Vice President Kamala Harris for distancing herself from the negativity. Let's see here. Where is it? I've got it here. Let's see here. Here you go.
We are now 6 days out from Election Day.
This is Norah
Nearly
O'Donnell.
60 million votes have already been cast in early in-person voting and through the mail. And the latest polls suggest the race could not be tighter. Both campaigns are locking their focus on the battleground states. Vice President Kamala Harris rallied in North Carolina and Pennsylvania today and is in Wisconsin tonight. Former President Donald Trump was in North Carolina earlier and tonight is also in Wisconsin. He landed in Green Bay just a short time ago and then pulled this campaign stunt, speaking to reporters from a garbage truck. proof that he and his supporters are giving no grace to a gaffe by President Biden, where he, in his explanation, inadvertently called Trump supporters garbage.
All right. Did you hear all of the different words that was used in there? Inadvertent, that it was a campaign stunt, that Biden, it was only one of those ridiculous Biden gaffes. You know, the same kind that we hear all the time. He didn't mean it. He didn't mean to call Trump supporters garbage. Well, that's not true at all, because the Democrats have been, demeaning Trump supporters for a very long time. On yesterday's broadcast, I played for you my gaffe. Well, it's not a gaffe reel. It is a montage of everything that the Democrats have been saying about Trump supporters for a very long time. Here it is again. Now, you tell me if Joe Biden inadvertently called Trump supporters garbage after you listen to this.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
To just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
Listen to him laugh. Isn't that great?
Right?
Yeah.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
Well, it's not surprising then that they get better and they cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them. Right?
The credulous boomer Rube demo that backs Donald Trump, that wants to think that Donald Trump's a smart one, and y'all elitists are dumb.
You elitists with your geography and your maps and your spell.
Yeah. That's enough of that. But so tell me, did Joe Biden intentionally say that, or was that just a gaffe? Well, this is the same thing that Democrats have been saying about Republicans for a very long time, that we're all stupid, that we're a bunch of deplorables, that we're xenophobic and transphobic. And I mean, it's absolutely incredible. But this is what Democrats believe. And they believe this for a very, very, very long time. And so, it is absolute bullcrap to say that Biden inadvertently called us a bunch of trash, because, I mean, that's what he's been doing for a very, very long time. And Democrats, too. It was not that long ago that President Biden stood outside of Independence Hall and gave what I think was, it had to be like a 20-minute speech about how terrible MAGA Republicans are. It's the MAGA Republicans who are going to destroy this country. You remember that whole thing? Well, I mean, this is the same thing that Joe Biden, that Kamala Harris, that Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, all of them have been saying about conservatives for a really long time. So it wasn't inadvertent. It wasn't a gaffe. And Trump pulling up in a garbage truck. Well, okay. You know what? I might call that a little campaign stunt. But, my friends, little things make a really big difference in politics and in grammar. Now, as I told you yesterday on the program, the Democrats are trying to clean up this whole garbage thing. And let me go back to yesterday's collection of sound bites. And I want to play you something. And we won't listen to the whole thing. We'll just listen to part of it. But I think it's important. It's Karine Jean-Pierre trying to clean up what Biden said. And like I said, we're only going to listen to a little bit, because there's a piece from the AP talking about the White House stenographers. I didn't know if you knew that the White House has stenographers, but they do. It's part of the official presidential record. So anything that happens, anything the president says, has to be kept for posterity. And they are the ones that send the transcripts of the speeches given by the president or other officials to the National Archives. It becomes part of history. And so there's a piece in the AP that we're going to get to in just a second. But here is how the White House is trying to clean up the whole garbage comment.
Comments yesterday referring to Trump supporter as garbage. And I know he's tried to clarify that he was trying to talk about what the person said. But one, I guess I want to know, does he think less of Americans who support Trump than he does of those who do not? And two, why is he using that kind of rhetoric? How is that presidential?
So a couple of things.
Okay, listen.
So just to clarify, he was not calling Trump supporters garbage, which is why this is why he wanted to make sure that we put out a statement that clarified what he meant and what he was trying to say. And so just want to make that very clear for folks who are watching. And I just want to read that out to folks. So he was regarding to the comedian.
Okay,
and
there it
I
is.
quote, "I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump's..."
Okay, all right, so you got it. So what they're trying to say is, no, Joe Biden was referring to the comedian when he said this.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Okay, did you hear it? Supporters, plural. Word choice is very important, and intonation when you're speaking is very important. But here is what the AP says in a piece entitled, "The White House Altered the Record of Biden's Garbage Remarks, Despite Stenographer Concerns." And I quote, "White House press officials altered the official transcript of a call in which President Joe Biden appeared to take a swipe at supporters of Donald Trump, drawing objections from the federal workers who document such remarks for posterity, according to two U.S. government officials and an internal email obtained Thursday by the Associated Press. Biden created an uproar earlier this week with his remarks to Latino activists responding to racist comments at a Trump rally made by the comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who referred to the U.S. island territory of Puerto Rico as a floating island of garbage. Biden, according to the transcript prepared by the official White House stenographers, told the Latino group on a Tuesday video call that, quote, "The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable and it's un-American." The transcript released by the White House press office, however, rendered the quotation with an apostrophe, reading supporters as in the possessive, with the apostrophe at the end of the word, rather than supporters, plural, which aides said pointed to Biden criticizing Hinchcliffe, not the millions of Americans who are supporting Trump for president. The change was made after the press office, quote, "conferred with the president," according to an internal email from the head of the stenographer's office that was obtained by the AP. The authenticity of the email was confirmed by two government officials who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss internal matters. The supervisor in the email called the press office's handling of the matter, quote, "a breach of protocol and a spoliation of transcript integrity between the stenography and the press offices." Quote, "If there is a difference in interpretation, the press office may choose to withhold the transcript, but cannot edit it independently," the supervisor wrote, adding, quote, "Our stenography office transcript, released to our distribution list, which includes the National Archives, is now different than the version edited and released to the public by the press office staff." So in other words, my friends, there is a gigantic controversy over an apostrophe. Over an apostrophe. Little things make a big difference, my friends. And this is how the Democrats are trying to mop up what Joe Biden said, with an apostrophe. And I mean, in my wildest dreams, we couldn't have made that up. But it further underscores how important it is to pay attention to the little details, because those are the ones they change to convince you to believe things that aren't true. We'll continue with Open Line Friday after the break. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Open Line Friday on Facebook, on Twitter, X. I still haven't broken that habit on YouTube, and on the Independence Network. I'm almost omnipresent, my friends, almost. But the podcast, you can listen to the podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts, iHeartRadio, iTunes, X, you name it. I'm all over the place. You just gotta have to go to Google and type in Cowboy State Politics, and you'll find me there. Before the break, and by the way, it's Open Line Friday. If you got something you want to talk about, give me a call. The phone number is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. And if you get kicked off the automated system, just call back. And I'll get to you when I finish my thought. But the learning how to work the automated system, it's it was kind of a learning curve for me, but I think it's pretty intuitive. And what it does is when you call in, it's going to ask you. You'll hear my voice, and it'll ask you to say who you are, where you're from, and what you want to talk about. And you just say exactly what you want to talk about. And then it's got this cool AI thing in it that translates what you tell the machine onto my screen. And I can see exactly what you say, and it's pretty darn accurate. So whatever you say, whatever you tell me you want to talk about, it pops up on the screen, and I can look and see, all right, so I want to talk to Jerry from Rock Springs, and Jerry wants to talk about this. And it pops up. It's super cool. I'm so excited that I found this gizmo so that we can have Open Line Friday. Once again, the phone number is 307-374-8989. So before the break, we were talking about Norah O'Donnell with CBS News. Well, it was not that long ago that CBS News was caught up in a gaffe. That's being charitable, by the way, a gaffe of their own, where they selectively edited the Kamala Harris interview so that it made her sound better. Now, let me just tell you how these things work. So if you do an interview with me, the only thing that I'm going to do to it is I'm going to eliminate some like really long pauses, right? Like if you pause and you lose your train of thought and there's this long silence, well, I'm just going to take that out, and so that we can continue the conversation. But it is absolutely unethical to change anything that's in the interview. You don't do that, right? Because it's absolutely dishonest to your audience. So the only thing I do is maybe take out excessive ums, or only a few of them, and eliminate some unnecessarily long pauses. So I mean, it's just makes it flow a little better. But I keep on record original copies of the entire interview, so that if there's ever a question, I can say, no, go back. Here's the entire interview. You can listen to it for yourself. The only thing that was done is, eliminated some long pauses. But CBS News, they went way beyond that and selectively edited the Kamala Harris interview. And I'm sure you've heard about this controversy, but since we're talking about CBS News, I thought we should rehash it. And so I went back and got the sound bites for it. So here is what they originally aired. So check this out.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Okay, so that is what they originally aired. But everything boiled out, here is what she actually said. This is the original interview. Listen to this.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
So they took an absolutely unintelligible answer to a question and absolutely replaced it with something entirely different.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
All right, so it's absolutely clear that CBS News selectively edited her answer and replaced it with something else to make her look better. Well, now Trump has nailed CBS News with a $10 billion lawsuit alleging, quote, deceptive doctoring of the 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. And I quote from The Blaze. The lawsuit alleges that the network tried to deceive viewers and voters for the election. With just days before the election, Republican former President Donald Trump filed a $10 billion lawsuit against CBS News and 60 Minutes. The lawsuit, which was obtained by Fox News Digital, accused CBS of, quote, partisan and unlawful acts of election and voter interference in an attempt to tip the election towards Democrats. Quote, Trump brings this action to redress the immense harm caused to him, to his campaign, and to tens of millions of citizens. The network has been accused of editing an answer by Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris during an interview with CBS correspondent Bill Whitaker. Now, and Bill Whitaker should be more angry than anybody else at CBS News. I'm sure people at CBS are pissed that they got caught. But Bill Whitaker should be even more angry because he asked good questions. I didn't think that the interview was all that bad. In fact, I think he pressed Kamala Harris on some pretty important issues and exposed that she doesn't know what the heck that she's talking about. So in any case, they're getting sued for $10 billion, rightfully so, and because they were trying to affect the results of the election. But, all of these media outlets, they're in the tank together. Nora O'Donnell and Bill Whitaker, he's the one that should be angry. The rest of them, though, the New York Times, the Cowboy, all of them, they are all liberal left-leaning. We'll get to more after the break on Open Line Friday. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but it's hunting season. And one thing that you can be absolutely certain of is while you're tromping around in the boonies, at some point, it's going to snow. A lot. And you definitely want to make sure that you keep your feet nice and toasty warm. The best way that you can do that is to order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the warmest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch
Watch out. Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. From every county in this state to every state in this nation, it's Cowboy state politics. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. It's Open Line Friday here on the program. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number is 307-374-8989. That's 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about it. Now, here is a voice that you may remember, and it pops up in an article from The Blaze. It mentions the person that we're about to hear from. A feminist icon who worked with Clinton and Gore jumps ship, endorses Trump. Quote, Biden-Harris suppressed my voice. Longtime Democrat Naomi Wolf has thrown her lot in with those Biden has called garbage. Feminist icon and best-selling author Naomi Wolf has thrown her support behind President Donald Trump, joining the likes of Lieutenant Colonel Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy, Teamsters boss Sean O'Brien, and the multitudes of other longtime Democrats who have grown disenchanted with the party, now unrecognizable under its current management. Quote, Naomi Wolf here. Never in a million years did I think I'd vote for Donald Trump, but the folks for whom I voted censored me illegally via big tech, killed thousands of people via the FDA lies, and put the guy who tried to help me save American lives in prison. Wolf wrote in a Sunday X post days before President Joe Biden called all of Trump's supporters garbage. At a certain point, you can't support the fascists, added Wolf. Now, Naomi Wolf was a guest on the program back in, I think it was February. It was a great interview. She has an election integrity bill that she wants every state in the country to pick up. And it's kind of a comprehensive bill, so it would be kind of hard for it to be pushed in Wyoming because we have that single subject rule. But it could be broken up into a couple different forms of legislation. But here is a little piece of Dr. Naomi Wolf's appearance on Cowboy State Politics. Here you go.
But if you were working for the Trump campaign in 2020, being the political consultant that you are, what would you have done to prepare 2 weeks before the election or a month before to perhaps prevent what happened?
Right, that's a sneaky question, but I credit you.
I'm
it's a good
question.
You are a sneaky guy. I credit you. Forgive me, I'm just making sure I'm not being remiss about anything else. So what would I do? I'm no longer a political consultant. I'm CEO of this company, Daily Cloud, and I'm a nonfiction writer and a journalist. But what would I do to prevent it? Well, a bill like this should have been passed in 2019, 2020, but that's too easy an answer. Gosh, that's tough, right? Because it was completely stitched up. I mean, there were so many people were voting in a state of disempowerment. Mm-hmm. There are places where you're not allowed to photograph your vote or video your vote or video the voting process.
Which is just criminal.
Criminal, exactly. And a violation of the First Amendment, I would also say. And a violation of the fact that legally all government records belong to the people, except those that are classified. So, gosh, I think he kind of did all the right things, except I don't think there would have been anything he could do in advance except to do what he did, which is tell people to turn out in great numbers to override the cheating. But given the flaws that we've identified, there really is no way to override the cheating.
Right. The depth of what was going on was
exactly
just almost insurmountable.
Yeah, and the algorithm can just adjust, theoretically. But I think after the vote, he should have come forward like Bush and Gore did in a statesmanlike way. And he was a little bit thug-like in how he tried to stop, the process till it could be verified. And I would have advised him to really just act like Bush and Gore and in a more statesmanlike way, say the vote hasn't been properly counted. We're going to go through all legal channels. We're going to turn over every rock. The people's voice needs to be heard. I would tell him to make it about the citizens and not about him or his candidacy or presidency, and then I would just excruciatingly, refuse to concede until it went up to the Supreme Court. That's what I would have advised.
I think that's
replay
fair
history.
enough.
So that was Dr. Naomi Wolf's appearance on Cowboy State Politics. That was a fascinating interview. And actually, I conducted the interview in the historic Supreme Court chamber at the Capitol. It's actually a pretty good place to do an interview. Not very often are there people in there. And so you can kind of get away from people. But interesting character. And she has been a longtime Democrat. But here is what piqued my attention in this piece. She tells the Blaze, quote, "At a certain point, you can't support the fascists," added Wolf. Wolf was a longtime darling of the left, a Democratic insider celebrated as a key proponent of third-wave feminism, who advised the presidential campaigns of Bill Clinton and Al Gore, took up the cause of the populist Occupy Wall Street demonstrators in 2011, and donned one of those pink hats with other Trump critics in 2017. So we're not talking about somebody who is, in the middle, who is, kind of like Tulsi Gabbard or RFK. She's not one of those. Dr. Naomi Wolf was kind of a radical for a long time, and now she is voting for Trump. But why does she say that at some point you can't support the fascists? Well, that's a term that Republicans are constantly being accused of. So what exactly is fascism? It's a little bit different than socialism. In socialism and communism, the government owns the means of production. Not in fascism. In fascism, you still own private property. It's just the government tells you everything you can do with it. So they are in control, even though that there is some private ownership of property, which, I guess you could make an argument that if you can't use your property how you want to, then it doesn't really belong to you. That's why private property rights are so important. But what is interesting is it further explains that what they are accusing us of is precisely what they are doing. So, we've heard a lot of terms this election being thrown around. He's a fascist, she's a fascist, you're a fascist too. Hitler and dictator and all of these terms. And there's a couple of reasons why they're being used. First of all, they lack common definition. That nobody really knows. I happen to know what the term fascist means because I'm a historian, and I pretty much also may as well have a degree in political philosophy. But most people don't. Now, racist, everybody understands what the term racist means, but it's one of those terms that has such strong negative connotations to it that you can call somebody a racist and not explain why or not give any evidence why they're a racist. And then the burden of proof is on them to prove that they aren't. What's the first thing you hear from somebody when they're called a racist? No, I am not a racist. I have no problem with black people, but it shifts the burden of proof for the opposing party to have to prove that they are not what they've been called. That's why terms like that are used in politics, because it has an immediate visceral reaction to the word. Now, fascist, that's an interesting one because it also has those negative connotations to it. The big-time fascists in American history, Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler, probably the two biggest ones, even though Adolf Hitler's party was the National Socialist Party, the Nazis. They were socialists, but later turned quickly to fascism. But those terms, they lack definition. Most people don't know what the heck that they mean. And on the other side of it, that's exactly what the left is doing. Think about this. You are being told what you have to do with your personal property. Think about your house. You're being told that you can't have an incandescent light bulb like the ones that are in the Cowboy State Politics studio. You're being told that you can't have a gas stove, that you have to drive an electric vehicle. You're told that your lawnmower is emitting too much carbon. You're being told what you can eat. It was just a couple of weeks ago, Kamala Harris said that they're going to make some changes to the food pyramid or the recommended standards or whatever. So they're telling you what you can eat. Okay. Now you still get to choose, what you get to eat, but you certainly can't have any beef. And you can still have a stove. You just can't have the one that you want to buy at Home Depot. No. You have to buy the one that we tell you. And you can still buy a car. You just have to buy the electric car. You see, those things are small examples of how fascism affects you. Now, it's not the Republicans that are saying those things. The Republicans are the ones that are saying, I don't really give a crap what light bulb you put in your house, nor do I care what kind of stove you have or what kind of car you drive or what you eat. By the way, go eat beef. And I mean, it's there is a vast chasm of difference between the thinking of Republicans and the thinking of Democrats. And that's what struck my attention about this Naomi Wolf article, and that she's been on the program. But she clearly points out who the fascists are, and that those are the people on the left, without a doubt. Coming up on the program, we got about 15 minutes left. If you want to be part of Open Line Friday, the phone number is 307-374-8989. The phone lines are open. Whatever you want to talk about, give me a call, and we'll do it. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a selection of better news, entertainment, and commentary than right here on the Independence Network, with great voices like Joey Carenti from Just Blame Joey, Ken Pendergraft from The Ramble Room, Tom Kelly from Wide Right Turn, and the lovely Christine from The Hair Affair. And of course, my program, Cowboy State Politics, Wyoming's most listened to political program. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live, Wyoming's conservative voice. Welcome back to the program, my friends. It's Open Line Friday. Even though we haven't gotten a phone call yet, it's 307-374-8989. If there's something on your mind that you want to talk about, give me a call. Now, the other person you may have heard of, and I played this soundbite earlier on in the broadcast, is Mark Cuban. Now, he claims that there are no strong, intelligent women on Trump's campaign. You know, he can't even be around strong women. Here is Mark Cuban saying it.
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women, ever. It's just that simple. They're intimidating to him. He doesn't like to be challenged by them. And, you know, Nikki Haley will call him on his nonsense with reproductive rights and how he sees and treats and talks about women. I mean, he just can't have her around. It wouldn't work.
No, it wouldn't work. Except, of course, that the day after Mark Cuban said that Nikki Haley was campaigning for Donald Trump. And what about all the strong, intelligent women that Donald Trump has around him all the time. Like the lady that is in charge of his transition team is Linda McMahon. Do you know what she also owns? The WWE. Yeah. Professional wrestling. And what about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, now the governor of Arkansas, who was his press secretary, or Kayleigh McEnany, or President Trump's wife, Melania, a supermodel who speaks 5 languages and just has a best-selling New York Times best-selling book out right now. Now, those apparently, according to Mark Cuban, are not strong and capable women. Well, the Trump campaign has responded. Now we're a day or two past what Mark Cuban said. But Mark Cuban, he is trying to be the left's version of Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk has said he's absolutely supporting Donald Trump. And should Donald Trump be elected, then Elon Musk is going to be what did he call him? Like the czar of overspending or something like that. But Mark Cuban is trying to be the rich billionaire on the left. The only problem is that he keeps stepping on his tongue and putting his foot in his mouth. And this time, he really stepped in. And just honestly, think about the gaffes in just the last 2 weeks, the election missteps that the Democrats have engaged in. And it is amazing. It is almost like the New York Yankees blowing a 5-run lead in the 5th inning of the last game of the World Series. That was an epic fail. To throw away the World Series with your bad play all in 1 inning when you're up 5 runs, which, by the way, in the World Series, if you're up 5 runs, that is a huge lead. We're talking about maybe it's not San Francisco 49ers versus the Denver Broncos. Maybe it's not that big of a lead, but it's huge, and they blew it. Well, it's the same thing that the Democrats are doing right now. There was Joe Biden saying this.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Yep. There's Kamala Harris saying all sorts of crazy stuff. But the Trump campaign has responded, and here is what one of their communications chair had to tell Fox News yesterday.
Caroline Leavitt is a Trump 2024 National Press Secretary, and she joins me now. Caroline, good morning to you. So how would you like to respond to Mark Cuban?
Well, I think Mark Cuban yesterday learned the hard way not to mess with strong and intelligent Republican women who support Donald Trump. There was an epic amount of backlash from so many amazing women who have worked with President Trump, who are voting for him, saying this is extremely insulting. Just look at the women that President Trump surrounds himself with. First of all, his beautiful wife, Melania. Which of the 5 languages that she speaks would Mark Cuban like to have a conversation about him with on this? Look at the woman who runs our campaign, Susie Wiles, the woman who's running the transition back to the White House, Linda McMahon, or the women who President Trump tapped to run the RNC, Laura Trump. This was a ridiculous insult, not just to the women who work for President Trump, but the tens of millions of them who are going to be voting for him. But this is what the Kamala Harris campaign has resulted in. Mark Cuban is Kamala Harris's top surrogate, and then 2 days ago, you had her other top surrogate, Joe Biden, calling half of the country garbage if they support Donald Trump. It's demeaning, it's insulting, and we're running a positive campaign based on real joy and uplifting all Americans who want to make this country great again.
And speaking of strong women,
yeah, exactly right. The Democrats are stepping in it, and it would appear that they can't get away from it. It doesn't matter what they do. They just continue to say dumb stuff. And it's like I say, it's just like the New York Yankees blowing 5 runs in the 5th inning. Absolutely incredible. And I foresee the weekend being, and here's the thing, the left is just incredibly desperate to save Kamala Harris in any way that they can. And the more desperate people get, the more they go out on a limb, and the more risky behavior they engage in. So I foresee a lot of really fun sound bites coming up this weekend, and I'll stay on top of them. And when we come back on Monday, I should have a whole boatload of them for you. Now, the left, though, and I found this article, and we've got 6 minutes left in the show, and I think that we can probably pull this one off. But the left has a plan to, and it's amazing because we sometimes, as Republicans, when we get beat, we kind of take a step back and we say, oh, well, I guess they got us on that one. We'll just be quiet for a little bit. The Democrats don't do that. It doesn't matter how far they're behind. They always have a plan to come back. And it's really the same plan they had last election. The first step is winning the vote. Now, of course, I mean, this sounds incredibly vague, but they have an army of people out there. It's all over. I don't have cable at home. We have just streaming services. It's cheaper, and I have a much better variety. Anyway, everywhere over all those streaming services is a Kamala Harris ad, and they've got a pretty good ground game going on, but they have a terrible candidate, so it's pretty hard to push that. Now, the second thing is, and we saw this last election, is they have to win the count. It was Joseph Stalin that said the most, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's not who wins the election, it's who counts the election that counts. Now, why should this even be an issue? If the votes are valid, counting should be pretty straightforward. But for the left, it's critical. Their mindset hinges on shady elections, where election laws are flexible in quotation marks, and the public is unsure about what's legitimate, disputes will arise, and you can bet they'll have an army of lawyers there. Now, step 3 is to win the certification. Now, they have to own the certification process in Congress after the election. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson recently stated that he expects Democrats to object to the electoral count if Trump wins. Not maybe or probably. He expects it. Democrats like Jamie Raskin have already said that he's going to object to any Trump victory. Step number 4 is they have to win the Electoral College. Now, this step could be explosive. Left-wing media are already priming the public with headlines like Politico's most recent article, "The Very Real Scenario Where Trump Loses and Takes Power Anyway." Their theory? Trump will rely on Republican support to endorse alternate electors, or if the electoral votes fall short, send the election to the House, where Republicans could select him as president. Democrats accuse Trump of plotting a plan that they have mapped out themselves. It's not what Republicans are doing. It's what the Democrats are doing that you should pay attention to. And number 5 is winning the transition. You see, traditionally the transition of power is a formality, but the left's strategy suggests otherwise. According to the left's 2020 playbook, this final step offers opportunities for disruption wherever they can manufacture them. If Trump wins, expect the usual suspects to reemerge with protests and accusations, all under the banner of defending democracy. So there will be protests. There is going to be unrest. Kamala Harris has already hinted at this, and so have her campaign surrogates. So expect that that's going to happen. I mean, we're talking about the people that burned down Portland and St. Louis, and that none of them were prosecuted. So of course, there's going to be some election shenanigans going on. But it is a mistake to assume that the left doesn't have a plan, that they are not already mobilizing for Tuesday. Because you can absolutely be certain that they are. There is no question about it in my mind, my friends. So Tuesday's coming. We got the weekend, and then it is election time. But we've got about 2 minutes left in the broadcast. Let me tell you what's going to happen on Cowboy State Politics coming up. Of course, we've got weekend update tomorrow. I'm going to kind of do sort of a mop-up of all the elections that are happening within the state of Wyoming, tell you exactly which races you should pay attention to, you should pay attention to all of them, but there are some of them that are pretty critical. I think that there's some school board races that I've been meaning to touch on, and I haven't yet. So tomorrow is a good chance to do that. So we're going to talk about that. Also, coming up next week on the program, we've got Monday, which is going to be a pre-election show. We're going to go through a lot of this, what the left is doing, what the right is doing, what they ought to be doing. And so it's going to be, everything is going to be leading up to Tuesday. And of course, on the Tuesday broadcast, I'm going to go vote. I am one of those people that I vote in person. So the lovely Christine and I will go down to our polling locations. We'll vote early. And then I'll come back and do the show so that I can, give you some report of what was happening at the Sheridan polling location. A little on-site interview, although our precinct is kind of small, so there's really very little that's happening down there. But anyway, have a good weekend. And for now, from the base of the Vickers, one more thing. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the show That way you can be notified every single time there's a brand new episode of Cowboy State Politics. Make sure that you're watching the live show. Don't forget that we have the ability to take live calls on the air. And while we didn't get any today, that doesn't mean we'll stop. So for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.